welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're new around here, my name is Katie. I'm a full-time sketchbook artist and I've lost my mojo recently. So I have been ill and I've talked a lot about it on my Patreon about sort of getting my spark back. So I need some accountability, so I'm filming it for YouTube. So I'm going to talk about my plans and what I'm going to do as we go, but the main sort of gist of it is I'm going to do 5 days and I have to be creative within those 5 days. Now, I do want to caveat this, obviously rest is very important and I'm not saying to work through it, especially if you're feeling burnt out. But for me, I'm not there yet, but I feel like I need to push myself to create. I haven't been creating as much as I want. I've also been scrolling far too much, so again, I talked about this in my Patreon video last month, but basically I feel like I'm consuming more than I'm creating. So my goal for these next 5 days is if I'm consuming, I have to create. And I feel like that will just help me get a bit of a better balance and hopefully get my spark back. So if you're feeling demotivated and have lost your spark, I really hope this video helps and encourages you to give some of these ideas a go. And fingers crossed by the end of day 5, I'll be feeling much better. So let's start with day 1. I am still consuming, I am still getting inspiration, but I'm going to try and actively use these days to create as well in my own sketchbook. So I visited this local art exhibition. It isn't on anymore, it was only on for 2 weeks, but this was really, really lovely. The people were so nice and I really enjoyed walking around it and getting inspiration from the art there. Instead of just consuming and getting ideas and inspiration, I want to actively work on this. So I'm going to use one of the pieces from here that I saw to create a piece in my sketchbook. I'm going to do a time lapse of the process and talk to you a little bit more about getting inspiration and seeing all these other artists and actively using that to create yourself rather than just letting it stew in your head and not actually doing anything with it. So there were some lovely pieces in the exhibition, but this owl piece is the one that really kept in my head. So I'm going to create in my sketchbook using that as inspiration. So I'm just putting down some acrylic gouache, a mix of different blues and a black, just to try and get that deep, rich blue. And one of the artists that make me think of owls is Mark Hurd. So as well as using that exhibition piece as inspiration, I also got a book out from my shelves which has a piece by Mark Hurd in it for the owl. So I was referencing kind of both of them, and then I got the basic shape of the owl and decided to add on some collage. And this was definitely directly inspired by Mark Hurd, who uses a lot of collage in his work, and I'm using tear-off paint palette sheets here, so I have quite a stash of these, and then I cut out some of the birds. Now those birds on the bottom left were definitely inspired by the exhibition piece, and then the stars, which took a really long time to cut out, I added those on too. So just using some pencil to add some detail onto the owl, and I did use an Acrylic brush pen just to add on the sort of juicy brown of his feathers. Now, I did try adding on some white Posca for the stars. I didn't love it. It's okay, but I prefer the look of the collage stars. So I started sticking those down, and I did add on some extra scribbles just for extra texture using my Neocolors and pencils, and then adding on a few just simple dots for the stars using my white Posca. I also add on a little bit of suggestion of this sort of movement down here with these birds. I don't know that it really worked, but I do love how this turned out. I finished it off with the date at the bottom, and yeah, it's just really, really fun. It was pretty quick, very quick by putting down the paint. Slow down with the collage, but I really like how it turned out, and I think this really stands out in my sketchbook. It's day 2. I'm actually about half an hour away from joining a creative hangout session on my own Patreon, so that's really helpful because I do find that making time for art can be quite difficult, so having these like set scheduled things really allows me to make time for it. So that's really good. So I've got about half an hour before I join that, and that will be for about an hour. I'm just going to do some painting. So I try to do something creative during them because, like I said, it makes me do it for that hour. And then I just hang out and chat with my patrons. It's always a really nice time. So I'm going to try and have the camera on and record some of the process. If not, I will show you afterwards. And yeah, I'm feeling really good today. I had a really good day yesterday, so that felt good. I did some cooking as well, and I also did a run. So I don't know, I feel like there's a correlation there of feeling good and getting the endorphins from the exercise that will also feed into me getting my creative spark back. I don't like admitting that exercise makes me feel better, but it does. So yeah, definitely a correlation there. So I'll probably check back in at the end of the week and talk about that because I do think that it's a very holistic approach, creativity. So that's that's an interesting thread that I might pull on. But yes, so it's day 2, so let's do our creative hangout session and I'll show you what I create. This angle feels like I'm about to do like a confession video or something. But we just had our hangout. It was really, really lovely. It's always so nice just chatting and talking with lovely people. And I did create a big piece in my Strathmore Sketchbook. So it looks like this. And I did do a time lapse for some of it. And then I finished it off with the camera off. And I did add some collage, so I'll do some close-ups here and talk you through it. So there are elements I like. I do really like the colours, and I like the Inktense in the background. Really like all that green and some of the texture as well. I don't know about the boat. The boat was in the reference. And then I did add on some people on the beach, which that didn't go very well. So that's why there's collage on top, so with the collage stones. And I think that works better. So yeah, overall, I think it's nice and colourful. This is the reference I was using here. So this was from a board that we created with my patrons. So last month we all shared our different photos for us to draw from. So I won't be able to link that below, but that was a photo from Helen Marie of Dubrovnik in Croatia. So really lovely image. I don't think I quite captured it, but yeah, it was nice to just splash around colour, and it's quite interesting actually that I decided to add on the collage. So obviously yesterday for the owl one, I did collage for these circle bits, and I don't know if I would have thought of using collage today to add on like the stone. So I think it's really interesting how these things link, not even necessarily consciously, but that because I did collage yesterday, I thought I'll do collage today to cover up a little bit. So the boat's also collage. It's just interesting how it all ties in. But yeah, really lovely session. So that is day 2 done, feeling really positive. I've got the rest of my day's work to do now, but it's always nice to make time. So yeah, I'll check in with you tomorrow for day 3. I decided to film this differently, so I'm actually not just doing a top-down time-lapse. I thought I'd film this properly with my camera. And I'm going to be studying a piece by Wayne Thiebaud. So I bought this book recently because I do want to go and see an exhibition of his, and this mainly focuses on his drawing. So this is called Draftsman. It is based from an exhibition that happened quite a few years ago where they exhibited just his drawings. And obviously he's very famous for his desserts and cakes, and so I really wanted to focus on this and do a study from it. I spent a good amount of time just reading and really learning more about his process, and I added on some notes, so I do find that helps me to remember things and digest things better. So I read along with my post-its, and it was just a really nice way to start my day, learning more about this artist and writing my own thoughts and just highlighting different quotes from him. So that was really nice, and then I decided to prop that up. I also found the painting equivalent online, so you can see that on the right, and then the black and white graphic study on the left. And I'm going to be working in my Royal Talens sketchbook and just doing a few different studies based on this piece. So because he talked a lot about using materials, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on, I did want to use different mediums in my sketchbook too. So I very rarely use graphite pencil, so I did that to start, and then I came in with this very thick black brush pen, and it was just really fun. I really lost myself in this process. I'm going to say in this video a lot that things are fun and interesting, but I really did enjoy it. And it was nice to use these different mediums and also see how it changed the way that I was drawing. And I think that is definitely something that Wayne Thiebaud found in his work, where he was changing his mediums depending on the subject and using them to create different effects to try and draw the same subject, but using them to highlight different elements of the piece. So I wanted to also add in a lot of colour, so I did come in with my Neocolors, and later on you'll see my brush pens. But I do fill the spread with lots of different studies, so I'm going to stop talking now. I'll leave you with some music and I'll check back in with you for day 4. Okay, it's day 4. I'm struggling to get into like my admin stuff and my editing, so I'm going to switch tack and do some art. So I actually have just under a month left on the course I bought last year with Newlyn School of Art, so I thought I'll make the most of that. So I'm actually going to prep this background. So the course is Conversations with Landscape Online. I talked about this course in one of the vlogs I did for The Artist's Way when I was doing something there as well, so I'll link that below. But I'm going to prep some paper. So I've got a sketchbook here I'm going to prep, and whilst that's drying, I've got a spread in here that's like pre-prepped. That was for another session that I was just playing with. So I'm going to work on top of that, and then hopefully this will be dry. And yeah, we'll see how we go, but I'm going to be using their references of this beautiful Cornwall coastal view. I'm still not really in an autumnal painting mood, so I'm still ignoring that. But yeah, I'll show you how we get on and I'll talk you through it. Okay, so like I mentioned, I am using my Kuretake paints here just to prep the page on my Strathmore Sketchbook, and I'm going to speed up the process so you can see this come to life. Just using a really thick brush here to put down some colour, really spreading it out, not thinking about what will go on here, just trying to get some colour down. I actually think this was quite pale compared to the other one, and I think I prefer it when it's slightly darker, even though it does make it easier to work on top. But whilst that dries, I'm working on the spread that was already painted on, and I'm using my acrylic markers here. I do have a video on my YouTube channel about using acrylic markers, so I'll leave that linked in the cards and down below. The turquoise Liquitex definitely overrun on the page, so I just used a brush to sort of spread that about, but they really allow me to be quite free and loose with them. I'm also coming in with some Derwent Inktense, so I really like the effect that gives when it's dipped with water, and they are water soluble. So that was fun to come in with a little bit of that. I'm really focusing on texture here and spreading a lot of the paint out while still letting that texture from underneath shine through. And I think that was my favourite thing about this piece, was having that texture really add to the piece, and I don't think it would be as strong without that texture. So if I just put this straight onto the blank page, I don't think I would like it as much. If I add something to an area I didn't like the lines down on the beach, I just come in with the acrylic marker and cover it up. So it's very forgiving, and I really think that with painting it is just a case of trial and error, and if you add something you don't like, then no biggie, you can just paint over it. So I did really like how this turned out, and I wasn't sure whether to continue. I'm just going to do some close-ups here so you can see some of that texture I'm talking about. But because this was dry now and I did have some time, I thought I would come back in and just create on top of this. And it's really interesting. So I'm using the exact same reference, a little bit of different materials. So I'm using the acrylic markers, but I also added in some gouache with that blue, and I'm getting a bit more messy. Now, I added on this Payne's grey, and you can see, I mean, that was definitely a mistake. So I spent most of the rest of the time sort of fixing that because it's way too dark. And I do think I overworked this piece massively, as well as it being a little bit sort of wrong on the value scale and definitely too muddy for me. But I do like how it turned out, and I'm really glad I did do this second piece because I learned a lot. I really like how the orientation of this spread and this sketchbook meant I had more space to work with. So there's definitely more sea, and I've sort of spread it out a little bit more, so it definitely feels less cramped than the Royal Talens page. And so I like the layout more, and I do like some of the passages. I like that I added in more orange, so I'm using some Derwent Inktense blocks there, as well as the acrylic markers and Neocolors as well. And I do like the energy in this, so it definitely feels like there's more movement. I really like that I did try to balance some of that dark brown over there on the right. I think it would have worked with a bit less of that, but yeah, I think I saved this just about. So I do really like how it turned out in the end, especially with the orange contrasting with that turquoise, but it would have been better if I hadn't put that on in the first place. So lots of learnings for me here, and I could easily do a third piece based on my learnings from these two. And yeah, I'm really glad I did do this second piece because I can see a big difference from this first one to the second one. It feels more rich. Here's a little look at the state of my desk afterwards because I did use so many mediums here, but I think it worked really nicely. And yeah, you can definitely see a difference, and there are definitely strengths in both, but I love the energy of the second one. So I think I let loose a little bit, especially because I thought I ruined it and I was thinking it was, beyond saving. But I'm really glad I pushed through and finished it off because, like I said, I do prefer it now, and there's definitely lots that I learned. Okay, so it's day 5 of my Creative Spark Challenge. I'm going to check in with you later just to sort of round up all the art that I've done. But I have just been watching a video whilst eating my breakfast from The Wild Pencil, and she shared a piece that has a really nice colour palette. So I'm going to take the colour palette as my inspiration because obviously when I'm consuming I want to be creating. So I'm going to take the colour palette from that piece. You don't have to copy everything that you're watching or, doing a direct copy, just things like maybe textures or a theme that inspires you. This time it is the colours, so it's really autumnal. I have been avoiding autumnal scenes, but I feel like it's really dark and gloomy today, so I feel like today is the day. So I'm going to take the colour palette as the inspiration. There's a nice minty kind of blue with a sagey green and then loads of oranges and rust colours. So I think I'm going to use watercolour today. That feels like the right kind of medium. I tend to just pick medium based on vibes. And yeah, I'll show you the painting and then I'll check in with you later and we can round up this project. Okay, so final day, day 5, and I was finally ready to paint an autumn scene. I've been in a little bit of denial that we are in autumn because I've been focusing on more summer and spring references, so today was the day inspired by Magda's colours. I'm just putting down some watercolour swatches down here. That was mostly to try and get the colours, but I wasn't very accurate with that. I think if I'd used gouache, I could have got some more of those pastel shades, whereas with the watercolour I just kept adding on more pigment. But it was a helpful starting point, and then I came in onto the other side, so although the colour palette wasn't accurate, it still was a good starting point for me, and I'll talk about that at the end as well, where you can use this inspiration as a jumping off point and then make it your own. So whilst I'm painting this piece, I do want to talk a little bit more about the consumption because, yeah, I definitely felt like I was consuming and not creating as much as I'd like. Now, like I've said at the beginning, rest is very important, and I think it is important to do that as well. But I definitely felt like I was in a place where I was just doom scrolling or just watching without actually doing anything with those ideas. So this week was very much about that, by taking this stuff that I was watching and then turning it into my own ideas. And like I said, I will round that up at the end and talk a little bit more about how that can stem into other ideas, and I think that that's really important to do. Social media and YouTube is brilliant, but there is so much out there, and I think it's very easy to just consume rather than create. So I'm really, really glad that I did create this, and I do love the colours, so I think I'm definitely more likely to create more autumn work now. I really love the balance of the green and the orange, and I will leave a link to the reference I used for this down below because this was a copyright-free image. I probably overworked it a little bit. I'm definitely still, I'm not an expert with watercolour by any means, and I'm still learning with that, but I did like layering those up and adding the richness of the colour that I wanted by layering up the different reds and the oranges. I also added in some shadows that I think worked really nicely, and I'm really, really happy with this spread. So I'm going to leave you with some music whilst I carry on painting, and then I'll check in with you, show you all of the art from my 5-day challenge, and then talk about how I found it. Okay, so that is the end of my 5-day little challenge. It's really, really dark. I don't usually film when it's this dark and rainy, and you can probably hear the rain because it's pretty heavy, which I wouldn't mind if I didn't have to go outside in it later, but I need to round up this video now, so I'm going to recap all 5 days, show you the art. I know you've seen the process, but I want to talk a little bit about it and how I feel about my creativity now. So let's start with day 1, which was this one. So this one was really, really fun. I think this was the easiest from this week in terms of the, quickest, and it was just really nice to do. It was inspired by that piece I saw at the exhibition, and then that made me think of this piece by Mark Hurld. And actually in this sketchbook I did notice I basically did this piece earlier this year. So when I was doing a daily art challenge. Oh, this was December actually. So I was doing a daily art challenge that I was kind of keeping to myself in December. So this was Christmas Eve in 2024, I do this owl, and now October 27th. So I don't know. It's quite interesting. It's actually really, really similar in terms of the blue and also the layout of the owl, and like he's swooping to the left. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. The collage was a bit fiddly, but really, really nice. I liked that it was inspired by an exhibition, which also led to something else, which led to something else. So a really good start, felt really positive on this day, and I was ready for day 2. Day 2 was on my call with my patrons. So this is probably my least favourite one, but it was very free. It was, I was just splashing colour on the page, and what helped me for this one was that I was creating with other people. So I was doing it with my patrons. We were just hanging out, creating our own stuff. So we work on our own projects. So I wasn't really thinking on this one. So it just kind of appeared. Like I mentioned, the collage wouldn't have happened if I hadn't done the collage the previous day. So that was interesting. And I do like some of the colours. It just, I don't know. I can't tell what I don't like about this one. Like the textures are fun. Maybe the boat isn't my favourite. But it's still really, really nice. And yeah, like I said, it was nice to just hang out and create with other people, even if I was just on my own creating at home. So that was the 28th. And then the next day, oh yeah, that was my study on Wayne Thiebaud, now that I've learned how to pronounce his name. So I did that was a difficult day for me. I was struggling in the morning. So it was really nice to just set some time aside to actually read. And I do add notes. Depending on the book, I'll write on the thing, but generally I will use post-it notes. So I read the first chapter of this, or the essay in the front of this book, which was really, really interesting. And yeah, put some notes on there. So that was really, really fun. I think I will have talked about that in the voiceover. I haven't edited this video yet. It's going up on Sunday. I'm not ahead with videos at all, so this is pretty real time. But yeah, really fun that he was talking about doing master studies and how important that is to copy other artists, and I was doing that here. So the spread I created, inspired by his cakes, was this one, also in my Royal Talens sketchbook, so you'll have seen I played around with different materials, and that was really nice. It's really interesting. I really was inspired by the fact that his use of materials kind of is linked to the subject, and then he would focus on different things to try and capture that richness. So if he wasn't using really thick oil paints for like the thick frosting on a cake, he would then focus on how, if he was doing black and white studies, how he could use tone to try and symbolise that richness. Really, really interesting. So I really enjoyed this spread. A bit different for me, but very fun to do. Definitely made me hungry. But yeah, I really like some of these colours, and although I didn't necessarily capture the, like thick icing, and I didn't use really thick paint, it was still really interesting to try and capture these objects using these different materials. I also included some of the notes I made in the book, and what I like about that, and it does definitely spark my creativity, is that it can go on from here. So obviously I've got this book. I want to go and see the Wayne Thiebaud exhibition, which is on at the Courtauld Gallery in London, and there's also a couple of video essays on YouTube that I want to watch. So it all kind of can be connected and interlinked. So yeah, that one was really fun and something I'd like to continue my sort of exploration on, and can be a thread that continues in my work. Day 4, I was doing part of the course from Mike and Debbie's course on Conversations with a Landscape. So I did this one. Again, I'll have talked a little bit about it, so I'm not going to, speak too much. But I am glad I did 2. So this one, and in my Strathmore, this one. And that was fun. Usually I would just do 1. I really enjoyed working on the prep paper, so definitely ignited my spark there that I want to continue, try different things to layer. I'm going to film a haul next week, so you'll see some ideas there. But yeah, I was really happy with this one. And then I did this one, and not this one. This one. And I think I prefer this one for different reasons. So I prefer the energy in this one and the space it has to breathe compared to this one. And this one now feels a little bit dull when I did this one. Definitely overworked this one a bit, but definitely loads of learning I could do. And I can take this and do another study. So that's not something I do often. So that is definitely linked with the course of doing multiple studies. They also talk about warming up, which isn't something I often do. I usually just go straight in because I'm impatient and I want to get my work done. So I feel like I'm talking a million miles an hour, so sorry. But yeah, very, very free, which was really really nice for me to do. I wasn't overthinking anything, I was just creating. So definitely was a fun creative challenge that day. I mean, I wish it was blue skies outside, but it's much rainier than this. So I did this piece, which you'll have just seen the process for. So this watercolour autumnal piece in my sketchbook, inspired by Magda from the Wild Pencil. So yeah, it was really nice to, like, I do watch a lot of art YouTube videos, so it was nice to take inspiration from there and then create whilst watching. So definitely something I want to do more of. This does feel like me, but there are definitely elements from this that was inspired by Magda, including the colour palette. Didn't match it perfectly, but that's totally fine. I did have a lot of fun with the oranges and the reds. This page I'm going to use as a bottom layer for another painting. So again, that was linked from the previous day where I was working on those prepared backgrounds from Debbie and Mike's course. And I can do that again here. So I don't think this is going to stay like this. I'm going to do another painting on top. But yeah, like the lines and some of the areas in the tree does feel more like Magda's work, but it's still mine. So you can do master studies and copy them precisely, or you can take inspiration from other artists. And obviously, I think it's important to always credit, and I just think that that's where style comes from. It's from taking lots of different ideas from other people's work that you like, and then making it work in your style or putting your own spin on it. So yeah, really pleased with this one. Really did love the colours. So maybe this is like the start of my autumnal season art, but I really enjoyed this one. So that is everything from my 5-day mini challenge for trying to get my creative spark back. I don't feel like super duper inspired, but I can also see that there are lots of different elements that I can continue forward. And that doesn't happen unless you're creating. Actually, I think there was a quote from Wayne Thiebaud in here that kind of links with that. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, here it is. So he was a firm believer that art comes from art and from nothing else. So that was because he placed great emphasis on like the study and analysis of art. But yeah, I do think that art comes from art. So lots of ideas will only happen when you're putting stuff to the paper. And obviously we can get loads of ideas thanks to YouTube and Instagram and courses and all of these different things that are put out into the world, and like we consume a lot of media. But I think when you take those ideas and actually apply it in your sketchbook, more and more come. And I've definitely found that this week. I do feel like there's lots of different threads that I can then pull on. So loads of different ideas that are whirling in my brain. And I do think it's also taught me that I can create and make time for it, even if I'm not necessarily feeling inspired to do it. I think the inspiration sometimes comes after. I did talk a lot about that, about forcing myself to make time for art, and I only create when I kind of make myself do it, rather than feeling really inspired beforehand. So I'll leave that linked up there if you're interested. But yeah, I do have to force myself to sit down. So it's actually been a really creative week, and I do feel really good about that. I feel really happy with the art I've created. You know, everything you create doesn't have to be something you love, but it's just the act of creating and the process of it that's really helped me, and I definitely feel like I'm in a better mental place now with my art than I was a week ago. So yeah, I hope that was inspiring. I hope it's given you maybe a few ideas. Maybe you can take this video and use that as a jumping off point for your own art. As you're watching this, then maybe you've been drawing along, or maybe it will encourage something that you've seen here to create in your sketchbook. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really happy that I did this challenge. Thank you for keeping me accountable here on my YouTube channel, and a huge thank you to my patrons for their support, because I wouldn't be able to create these free YouTube videos here on YouTube without them. So let me know what you think of this one down below. It's probably going to be a long one. There's quite a lot of art making in this vlog, so I hope you've enjoyed it. And I will see you next Sunday in my new YouTube video. See you later.